Jewish Board is a institution of family services, and incorporated in that are people who are HIV and have AIDS. And I think it's very important for these people to have some kind of outlet, you know, a place to go on a consistent basis, a group of people who can seem to identify with what you're going through, because it's a different set of dynamics from other things that goes on.
They give me feedback, I thank God for this group, because this group has got me in touch with a lot of my feelings.
What we do in this group is we tell stories about our lives. And we tell stories that have made a difference in our lives. And what's really unique about this group is that what we have is a group of people who come very ready with their listening. And that's a real gift, to have people who are willing to spend an hour to listen to you and to listen to your stories.
That's a real major part, is the listening skill. It's a real major part, and it's something that we don't do enough of in life.
When you come in, be prepared to share a story if you like. Be prepared to listen, and if you don't interrupt the storyteller when the storytelling is in progress. And if you have feedback, after the story is told, you'd like to share some identification, you're allowed to do that.
I don't like the group therapy, the looking at the group as some sort of group therapy, because a lot of people have had very bad experience with therapists and in group situations.
Well, I mean, I've been a therapist, a psychologist for 11 years. And I've always sat on the opposite side of the table. It's always been them and me. And what happens in this group is it's really not like that.
It was really after seeing how committed he was to this group that I felt comfortable with saying, I'll come and I'll participate and I'll be part of it, and that he wasn't one of these patronizing white people. And the fact that he came from South Africa was just that. He came from South Africa.
When I was living in South Africa during the time of apartheid, you might consider, because I'm white, that I was an insider. But I always felt like I was an outsider. I never really felt like I belonged. And there was always something wrong. I suppose the fact that I'm gay helped along that process, that I always felt like I was outside. And I think I identify myself very much with people who are outsiders in some way, and who have struggled with life.
Attending a storytelling group, it allows me just to be me and remember the happy times in my life, because me as an individual, I will tend to focus on the tragedies and find solutions and explanations and why me and all that.
Storytelling is just not about sad things or being positive. It's about whatever you feel at that moment, a memory, a touch, a loved one.
Each story I hear, I have some kind of life experience with it, if you look at it, and that's what's wonderful about it. You can laugh at some of the tragic parts, too. Sometimes you hear people laughing, someone sharing something tragic. You say, that's a terrible thing to share that and then to be laughed at, but it's not an identification, because you can say, well, honey, I got something to tell you later. You think you were some kind of leper or whatever, and it's not that. Like, I have times when I'm in my tragedy mode, and I'm very Camille about it, and my life is over, and then I think, honey, I had some fun using out there. I wouldn't suggest it for anybody, but there's some terrible things I did. Like, I was in drags, and I'd be going into an abandoned building with no lights, maybe 2 stairs on the entire staircase. I had on heels, a back out dress, honey, but I could make those stairs and dare anybody to take my stuff from me, but I was a fierce diva, so I thought. And you can laugh at that crap, and life goes on, and you start to have a new appreciation for things. And that's what makes life so worthwhile.
The thing about storytelling group, and why we're here today, is really about, this is your opportunity to tell it the way it is. It's not how you would like it to be, or, putting together a good story to give a good impression. It's just about having an opportunity to say what happened, the way it was, in an environment where no one's going to judge you, where no one's going to interpret what you're going to say, where no one's going to confront you for having had the life that you had and for telling the story that you tell. It's simply an opportunity to tell it. And it gives the person who's telling the story an opportunity to see their life in exactly that kind of way. Like, this is my life, take it or leave it. This is what happened to me, take it or leave it.
The moment is now for me. Although the story was then, and I've been reluctant to talk about it in a group setting. Like Bernard, I too am outspoken. However, I am the great stuffer. I shut down the real pain when I don't want to feel it. And I did that for many years, using drugs as a shield. But there's a need for me right now, and I'd appreciate your being there for me. I was about 18, and I had just had my son, and I felt the need for love. I felt the need to party. I felt the need to just let go. And I went out with my girlfriend, and I met a guy who I liked. I don't know if I wanted, I wanted sex. If not, I wouldn't have pulled my panties down. But in the course of that action, I had sex with 7 guys. And not to really feel that pain, I said it was okay, I could handle them. You know, because that's where I was, that was me. You know, but as I look back at that night, I'm in a lot of pain, and I now know that I was raped repeatedly. But I told myself to get through it that I allowed it. But I had only wanted to have sex with one guy, not all 7 of them. And to hear myself say that, it helps me to relieve that pain. But that's where my addiction took me. They had drugs. They had what I wanted, you know, and I know today it was not okay.
I hadn't seen my son in a while, and I wanted to see him. And a friend of mine brought him to the hospital, and they wouldn't let him upstairs. And he had brought his teddy bear with him. Now, my son's like 9 years old, but this teddy bear he has had since he was a baby. And when they would not let him upstairs, in a very adult way, he handed the teddy bear, and to my friend, he said, "Give this to my daddy, and let my daddy hold the bear, and tell my daddy to keep the bear with him." And I held on to that teddy bear, okay, the whole time, the whole month that I was in the hospital. And it was like, you know, it was like sometimes they bring the child around to the window and you can wave, and he didn't want to wave. He didn't want to come around to the side window. He just said, "Give the bear." And every time I talk to him, he makes sure that I still have the bear. And anytime I go any place, the bear comes with me. So that bear, and for him to give up something that he's had for so long, and that was a major part of his life, it was like, yeah, you know, it was a special daddy moment.
I was sick one day. I had a high fever, and when your fever goes out at a certain point, you become a little delirious, yeah. And I called here because I couldn't stay awake, and I was getting scared. And I called here, and I asked for Vicky, and I called her mom on the phone. My mother died when I was 5, and so that word is like something foreign to me. That's like me speaking Spanish. I don't know that word. And the next day, she told me that I had called her mom, and she cried. I cried too, but she cried because love, you know.
My favorite story, I guess reuniting with my daughter and coming together as a family once again with me, my daughter, and my son. And I need to say to my daughter, I love you, Quadira. Just being together as a family, once again, I'm really emotional. Let's go on. Go ahead.
Take your time to talk about it, Judy. Go ahead.
My daughter's just coming back in my life. I think June of this year. And, I told my daughter I had the virus and, sharing and storytelling one day. I can remember Bernard being there for me, one day about this child. She's trying to control my life. And I'm struggling right now because I'm also recovering. I'm also living with this virus. My children don't have the virus, thank God. This little girl. I love her dearly. But I struggle, and I'm still struggling, with this kid, trying to run my life. And she even has a brother. She dictates to her brother, he dictates to me. It's like I'm the child and they're the fucking adults. Excuse me. And it gets real overwhelming to me sometimes. I don't know. But I do love my children. Having this virus, I'm real scared to leave my children here. I think that's my worst fear and feeling are my children. Not being there for my children, because sometimes I don't think I'm capable of taking care of my children, because sometimes I get so into me. But I'm dealing. I thank God for people down here, the Jewish poor.
So I didn't know which story meant the most to me, the when I first gave birth, or the story about my mom. But the story about the birth is too graphic. I'll go with the one about my mom.
Lord have mercy.
I had shared a story in group, and it really choked me up. I come across, and in this room I can come in here and I can be me, and I can be afraid, and I can be vulnerable, and people are there for me, and that's what's so wonderful about this group. But the story I want to tell is about my mom. I had told it here. I was very self-centered, and when I was out there using drugs and things, I was out of touch in any warmth and any loving feelings I had ever had for anyone, because I had to survive, And when I came into recovery, things started to flood back. And one of the most precious memories I have of my mother, because she went through a lot for us. We were poor. It was either feast or famine. My father would quit a job at the drop of a hat, although he had 5 children. Either we had a lot or we had very little. And my mother would always cook for dinner, and she'd always make sure we had a pork chop or a chicken leg or whatever. And I used to say, Mama, well, why you don't have any? Why you not eating any meat? Oh, hush, child, I don't need any meat. I'm not hungry right now. I'll eat the vegetables. And it took me years later to realize that there was no meat, and she made sure her children had. I remember a terrible argument her and my father had. She said, you quit your jobs always around the holidays. I tell you what, Charles, this year these kids will have a damn Christmas. And these memories just started to flood back, and this process happened in the storytelling group. One of my happiest memories was my mother was covered in biscuit dough, because in those days people made their own homemade cheese biscuits, and they were about the size of her breast. They were very full and nourishing. You know what I mean? I love you, girl. And it was just so nice to remember that, for it almost to be reincarnated in my heart. That, my mother did a lot for me. There's nothing I wouldn't do for her.
I want you to know, and this is to the world, I want you to know that it's not a gay clique or a woman clique or NA clique. It's a people clique.